the curtains parted, and I saw a silhouette of a person. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think anything of it. I thought, well, there must be somebody maybe there, maybe a granddaughter cleaning the place. I don't know. So as I walked around, did the whole deal, and then I came back, and she's there again. I mean, I could see, like I couldn't see, like if I saw her again, I wouldn't recognize her, but it was a person in the window. So I went back around, and I'm like, hey, you said the place is vacant. I said, there's a person that was looking at me through the window. And she goes, you saw Susie. And I'm like, Susie? Yeah, people see her every once in a while. Nobody lives there. Nobody's lived there for years. She used to live there 50 years ago, and once in a while people see her. All right, welcome back. This is the Massive Passive Income Show.
I'm Colter.
And I'm Jason. We're excited to be here. At least I am. We missed last week. My fault.
No, that's all right. It was a busy week.
It was.
And, we're going to have a busy next couple of weeks, which so it's positive that we're able to get together and talk. And we're going to talk about the history of properties and just some of the cool things that we've been able to see and experience as we walk through properties, and even some of the like paranormal, weird things, paranormal stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I've walked some really cool houses in the last 20 years. Some really historical houses, multi-million-dollar houses, small little, basically camper houses. Like they're maybe 500 square feet, if that, one bedroom, half bath, and no basement. I mean, I've walked just about anything. But one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is I was able to walk a house yesterday, which was my great uncle's house. He's the one that built the West Bank Motel. And what's so neat about it is I spent time in it when I was a kid. So to walk through it yesterday and do an inspection, they really haven't updated it for probably since the 60s, I would imagine. In fact, it may be original from the 40s. There's not even a shower upstairs, just a tub and just a spigot. So that was back when, and then you could tell they tore the wall out to put a shower in the main bathroom on the main floor, but the basement's just not finished. And it was a cool house when I was a kid, but the history of that house, I found the plans for the house and found some of the cool things about the house, how it was built. There was a huge steel beam all the way across in the garage, which is way overkill, but probably because he had built hotels, he probably was like, whoever he had build it, probably was like, I want it, I don't want this thing I want it to last. And so they just way overbuilt it. And so I love the history of houses. And what's great about the people that are going to buy it is they want to leave it as original as possible. Obviously, they're going to put new flooring in. The flooring's pretty trashed and it needs new paint. But as far as the uniqueness of it, all the build-ins and all the closets, and all the closets are lined with cedar. I mean, it was a cool old house. And the upstairs bedroom had shelves everywhere and drawers and windows all over the place. I mean, there was 7 windows for that upstairs bedroom. You just don't see that much anymore. And they were all wood windows, and the wind was blowing a little bit, and the drapes were moving in the wind. But really cool. Have you ever walked to a few cool houses? I'm sure you have. Anything that sticks out a little bit?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, we just put one under contract, and it's actually 2 different houses on one parcel. But we went into the first house. It's kind of a normal, it'll end up being a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. But the one in the back, it actually was used as a honey, manufacturing plant, but and it's just another little house attached to a little garage.
Probably no business permit pulled for that.
I'm sure there was. Yes, what are they? It's kind of a moonshine honey, operation.
There you go.
But they ended up having an elevator that was in this house, and so the elevator is on this weighted system, and it has this big spindle wheel, and then it has 2 great big beams, and then it has this elevator. And I took my daughters to go and look at it for the first time, and of course they wanted to go up and down and up and down, and what a fun experience to see that. Cool. But and then to just imagine what their operation was like, and them being able to produce honey down in the basement, and then bring it up to ground level, and then ship it out of the garage there.
That's awesome.
So there's just cool aspects, and every property has its own history. Not everything is exactly visible, when you go to show up to the property, but there's history. There's families that have been, that have grown up there. There's, scary things that may have happened, or exciting things, or good things.
Babies have been born, babies have died. I mean, every house out there has a story, and it's fun, especially like when you remodel and you tear out a wall and you find something that's been covered up. I mean, we've tore down a wall and found an old fireplace that they just sheetrocked over top of. They've sheetrocked over old, those dumb waiters that they used to have that are, the things that you could put meals into that they used to bring up to the second floor or whatever else. We've had people that are just walled right over top of one of those, and you start moving things around. You're like, what's this big, huge,
what's the shaft?
Yeah, what's this big shaft for? and so we figure out, that's what it's for, and you dig through layers of wallpaper. It's amazing what people, they loved wallpaper back in the day. I mean, 4 or 5 layers of wallpaper. It's crazy.
Wow. Well, and what is the craziest thing, or one of the wildest experiences that you've had in one or several houses? I mean,
I've found marijuana gardens in attic spaces. I've found a dead person in a backyard. Man, what else have I found? A person living in a home that they didn't know was there. I found 2 extra bedrooms in an attic that the people living there had owned it for 20 years, had no idea they were there. I'm not kidding.
Really?
Yeah, they bought the house. They lived there. It was two older ladies, and they both retired from nursing. They were like in their 65, and now they're in their 80s, and they both needed assisted living, so they were going to move out and go on to the next stage of life. And I showed up there, and there's windows, and the windows just look like they're for show, but they're all painted black. So I got up on the roof, and whenever, there's a window, whatever else, I try to look in to see if I could see inside the attic. And I looked inside there. There's a little place where the paint had peeled off, and I could see wallpaper. I'm like, wallpaper in the attic? What's that all about? So I went through the whole house, and I'm like, where would the stairs be? And in the hallway, it was a flat board, so everything was textured except for the hallway. And I could see kind of a lip. And I'm like, no way, there's an access there. So I went and grabbed the lady. I was like, hey, she was there. I was like, hey, do you mind if I cut the caulk and the paint around this in the hallway? I said, I don't know if there's something there, but I really think there is. She's like, sure, I don't care. So I got on my razor blade and cut around it. And there's a couple screws. As soon as I did the screws, I heard this clank, clank. And I'm like, whoa. So I opened it just a little, looked inside, and then I pulled it down, and these big steel weights with these big clickers and a set of stairs, chink, 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 came out of this. I'm not kidding. Like, you can't make that up. It came down, and I'm just standing back and watching it all come down, these big pulleys and wheels, and it hit the floor. And the lady's like, what in the world's that? And I was like, I think I just found some square footage. So I went up the stairs, 2 complete bedrooms up there, completely vacant. Nobody's been up there for forever. Wow. And they had some old Murphy beds that you pulled out of the wall that were on rolls. The mattresses were there, but the frames were there. And man, I just added 600 square feet to her house. She had no idea it was there. She's like, we hired an inspector before. He never said there was anything there. I'm like, yeah, you may not have got the right inspector. Of course, that was 30 years ago when they bought it. But how crazy is that? That's probably one of the craziest things I've seen. And the dead person in the backyard, that was crazy. That was crazy. He had a heart attack, and he was the person that owned it, and he knew I was going to be there, and he was out doing something or other, and I went around the house and went out there, and I saw him laying, and went up to him, and he'd been dead for, probably 5-6 hours. So I called the realtor. I'm like, hey, there's a dead guy here. I don't know if I want to be here. Look, can we reschedule this? Because, you know what I mean? Not that it's weird, but I didn't want there to be any reason for anybody to ask me any questions or anything. I just showed up, saw it, made the phone call. That was pretty crazy. That was pretty crazy. But so I've had a couple paranormal things that have been kind of crazy. Do you guys want to hear those?
Let's hear them.
Okay. So I was up in DuBois, and I was doing an inspection on an old hotel up there. And there's a property right next door that's completely vacant. But for me to get around to the backside of the hotel, because they built right up on the fence line. I mean, the fence line went right to the building, and then the fence worked as the fence line all the way up to the canal. So the only way to get to that part of the building was to get in the other person's yard. So I told the lady, I was like, hey, does anybody live there? Nope, nobody's there. So I'm like, okay, no problem. So I walked around the outside. And anyways, I didn't know it was vacant. She just said nobody lived there or whatever else. And as I'm walking through the yard, the curtains parted, and I saw a silhouette of a person. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think anything of it. I thought, well, there must be somebody maybe there, maybe a granddaughter cleaning the place. I don't know. So anyways, I walked around, did the whole deal, and then I came back and she's there again. I mean, I could see, like I couldn't see, like if I saw her again, I wouldn't recognize her, but it was a person in the window. So I went back around and I'm like, hey, so the place is vacant. I said, there's a person that was looking at me through the window. And she goes, ah, you saw Susie. And I'm like, Susie? Yeah, people see her every once in a while. Nobody lives there. Nobody's lived there for years. She used to live there 50 years ago. And once in a while, people see her.
Oh my word.
I'm
That's
like,
just like,
no,
what?
I know.
That's crazy.
So then I'm like, all right, I don't want to go back over there. I got to go back over there. So I went over and checked the doors, and the doors open. So I walked in, walked around a little bit. And you know, not that I'm a big spiritual person or any kind of paranormal thing, but you could feel someone was there. And it wasn't a bad feeling. It was a good feeling. It was just a feeling. And I even said out loud, you might think I'm weird. I'm like, hey, sorry to disturb you. Just wanted to come check things out. And I was like, I'm out of here. And I shut the door. Because I'm like, you know, I don't know. I want her to haunt me later or something, you know. But that was kind of crazy. And then the other thing was I was in a property in downtown Idaho Falls. And I walked in. It's completely vacant. And I'm walking around. I kept hearing this boom. I'm like, what in the world's that noise? Boom. I'm like, that's weird. Like, where would that come? So I went downstairs, looked around, nothing at all. So I come back upstairs, I'm doing my thing, I'm opening and shut windows, and I hear it again. Boom. Boom. I'm like, that is weird. So then I got my phone out and I recorded it. And the hair stood up on the back of my neck. After when I recorded, I'm like, something's crazy going on. Well, then nothing happened, you know, just some different noises. Well, then I was upstairs. And there's this music box. You ever seen those music boxes where you pull the string and it like, they used to hook them to cribs and then it would like ting, 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 you know, whatever it was. And it was to put the kid to sleep. There was one on the back door of the front door, on the back of the front door, sorry. And it was hanging there, it was this little string. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. So I didn't do anything with it at all. So I went downstairs, I'm downstairs, and all once that freaking music box starts going off. And then I'm not kidding, my hair on the back of my neck, I'm like, so I got out my phone, I've recorded, because I love to send things to my kids that are kind of freaky when I am in inspections. And I walked all the way upstairs, and that string is slowly going up. And it was all the way up anyways. So, and nobody's been there? So here's the funniest part. I called the realtor, and I'm like, hey, look, this just happened. She goes, oh, no, it didn't. I'm like, yo, this just happened. She goes, no, it didn't. And she goes, I'll be there in 5 minutes. She came there, took that music box off, threw it in the garbage. I'm like, all right, it's gone. It's gone. She goes, I don't ever want you to tell that story again.
And now it's for the whole world to know about.
Nobody knows. It was wild. It was 3 or 4 years ago, so nobody knows. But she was just like, you aren't going to say that to anybody. I was like, no, it's just fine. Could have been a mishap. You know, who knows? Maybe when I opened and shut the door, maybe it jerked something. I don't know, but I could feel that one. It was weird. In fact, my kids, for like a year after that, they would text me, hey, we're around a campfire. Would you send me that video of you and so she'd show it to everybody. It was like, no way, because you could, as soon as you hear it, in fact, I'll let you hear it later if you want. You can almost feel like your goosebumps just go nuts. So,
oh man.
So there's people out there. I mean, you whatever you want to feel of, you know, angels, paranormal, spirits hanging out. I think they're there. I think if you want to call it dimension, if you want to call it a veil, whatever you want to call it, I think they're closer, and I think they're around us more than what we know. And I think if we knew how much they are around and we just can't see, I think it'd probably freak us all out. So I think sometimes there's reasons for it. Why Susie decided to show up and I could see her. Why, you know, this person in this one, maybe they're just having some fun with me, I don't know, in this other house. But that's been the only two that have been kind of like, okay, something was here and it wasn't a person.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think it can freak us out or it can comfort us.
Yeah.
Right? You have these spirits that are close, and you know, and I like how you put it as dimensions or, you know, veils, and you know how thin that is at times. Is that you have, you know, the history we started by talking about the history of properties and real estate and the experiences that we're having that are new to properties that we're exploring, but you know. Again, I think that you can be afraid or you can be, you know, you can be fearful of what that dimension looks like, or you can be comforted by the ideas that, hey, you know what, we have families family members that have passed on.
Yeah.
And, we would love to think that, they're close to us still, being able to help us through this journey of life. And
the history of these homes, I think, I wish there was a way that you could, if it was required for every closing in every house, that there's a picture of the family in the front of the house, and then when they sell it, another picture. I wish there was a way you could go back and see. I mean, even in the numbered streets in Oak Falls, 100 years some of those houses have been there since the 1920s. And I mean, 1898, the one out in Manan that I did, that old mansion house. I mean, just cool history. How many kids were raised there? Who had their first kiss on that doorstep? Who fell in love in that house? I mean, who died in that house? Who raised a family in that house? Who made a multi-million-dollar deal in that house? Who went bankrupt in that house? I mean, there's so many things that we have no idea that has happened with those homes. Those homes have such great history, and it's so much fun to be a part of, because sometimes I think every house I flip, every house I remodel, a little piece of that house comes with me. Something about that's unique is a part of me from here on out. And I just did one that it was built in 1920 that I moved out to Yukon. We tried to leave it as original as possible, and people thought I was crazy to do that, but it is a cool house because all the windows are all the original casings. I custom ordered windows to fit in them. All the doors I left, all the trim we left, all the hardwood floors. I mean, there's some history there. That thing was originally built out in Osgood, moved out by I-15, and then I moved it again to Yukon. Almost 100% of the houses never move, and this house has been moved twice.
Wow.
in its almost 100 years. I mean, talk about history. So that's another level of why I love real estate. It really is. I mean, not only the money you can make and the things you can do at the house and the creativity and the remodeling, but I think it's the history of homes, and I love learning the history of homes because there's just cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like you can turn back the pages of time as you dig through like the wallpaper that you were talking about. And actually just recently had a friend that showed us their new wallpaper company that they just bought. And
No way.
Yeah, so
It's coming back.
They have this whole like huge printing press of different designs.
That's
and
cool.
Designers that are all, worldwide actually, that are sending them print schemas. And anyways, it's really interesting. Like I said, you turn back the pages of time as you go from the yellows to the blues to the greens to the, opaques and whatever else over the history of these houses. And anyways, there's so much to learn. So much to look back on.
In fact, that reminds me, can I tell one more story?
Yeah.
Where are we at? Okay, so one more story. I'm in this house in downtown Idaho Falls again, and the tree had fallen on the house. So normally I get up into an attic, check it out. But if there's damage that I can see to an attic, then I climb all the way in to see what's going on. Or if I see something crazy deep in the attic, then I climb in there to check it out. So this tree had fallen on the house. Nobody lived there for probably 15 years. It's been vacant. And the place was full of old stuff and whatever else. So I'm up there in the attic, and I climb all the way to the back. And on the way to the back of the attic, I find these coffee cans. And I'm like, what in the world? Why were these coffee cans? So I got up there closer and looked inside, and they're chock full of gold coins and silver coins. So nobody's lived in this house for 15, 20 years. Nobody has any idea that that's there except for the person that put it there. And the person who put it there is dead. So you go through that in your head. Now, I'm human. My first thing in my head is like, oh my gosh, nobody even knows it's here. I'm taking it. That was like a 2 or 3 second thought. But then I'm like, no way, not taking it. It's not mine, right? Somebody's got to be in the family. Somebody's still alive. So then I thought, do I call the realtor that's the listing agent? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to call the realtor that's listing agent just because I don't want that to skew somebody else's from normally being honest. Because if I called the realtor, it's like, yeah, here, give it to me. I have no idea. He could have held onto it. And I thought, there's somebody. I had this feeling somebody's been looking for this and they haven't been able to find it, even though nobody lived there for years. So I go hold of my buddy, it was a policeman, and I said, hey, this is what I found. And he goes, where is it? And I was like, well, I took it. I said, but I put it somewhere, so I know where it's at. And he's like, all right. He said, let me do some research, took the address. He calls about 3 days later. He's like, look, I found the only living relative, which is a son, living in Pocatello. And I'm like, no way. And I told him what you found, and he burst into tears. He said, we've been trying to find that gold that we knew my dad had, but nobody knew where it was at. He died without anybody knowing where it was at. We even looked through the attic. We looked everywhere, and we thought he must have either got rid of it, or he lost it, or he sold it and spent it, and he goes, I haven't been able to find it. This guy is 60 years old, really never had much in his life. That was enough gold coins to pay his house off and to have tons of money left over. And only thing I was hoping for is he would have thrown me at least one coin, but no, that's all right. So I was able to give it to the policeman. The policeman gave it to him. I didn't want him to know who I was. I just wanted it to get to the right person. And that was a great, great feeling that this guy needed this so badly, and they've been looking for it for so long. I would imagine it was probably a couple $100,000 worth of gold coins and silver. Yeah, because at that point, I think it was $2,000 an ounce at the point when I found it, $2,200 an ounce. And I'll bet there was 2 coffee cans, and they were heavy. For me to get them out of there, I mean, full of gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I left them at the place, but I moved them from where they were at. So because I'm like, I don't want to have it in my possession, but I want to make sure I know where it's at, and it's easier to get to, because I don't want to get up there in that attic again. So anyways, yeah, got it to the right person. I mean, what a cool thing. What a cool thing.
Well, and that's really, how rewarding is that for you? But to have the integrity and to say, you know what, this is not mine.
Yeah.
I mean, I can relate with the initial thought of like, man, nobody else has cared about this for the last 15 years.
Nobody in the family's alive. We didn't think.
Yeah. But I love your logic behind who you contacted, how you got a hold of them, and commend you for going through that and doing exactly what you did. That's really, really.
And one
cool.
day maybe I'll meet him. Maybe I won't. And it's okay if I don't. You know what I mean? I'm just glad I got to him. And when he said, the cop that was my buddy, when he goes, I told him, I said, hey, we found something at the house. He said the first thing out of his mouth, did somebody find the gold? So I'm like, wow, well, he knows. And he's like, actually, we did. The inspector did up in the attic. And he's like, I was up in the attic. He goes, it was clear back in the corner. And the guy just started crying because he knew. And they'd been trying to find it. So pretty cool. It's been fun. Real estate, I tell you what, each day I walk a different property every day. I make offers on properties at least once a week or every other week. And you just never know. It's like that Forrest Gump thing, Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know. Never know what you're going to get until you bite into it. And real estate really is like that. Sometimes you have no idea what you're going to get into until you make the offer, you buy it, and then you start digging in. We found some crazy things and some cool things, extra square footage. It's, so.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us in this episode. We talked about history and paranormal and cool findings. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gold aside from, the cool properties. So
yeah. I got some stories about killing a raccoon. If you guys want to hear that one day, we'll do some of that.
We'll have to save that for another episode. But thanks for joining us today.
Thanks.